Where it really is okay to not be okay. I'm Rae Bonney. I'm a qualified counsellor, workplace mental health specialist, and not to mention a very dedicated and oftentimes enthusiastically disruptive men's issues advocate. It's not everyone's dream job, but hey, remember, men also matter. Well, the kids are finally back at school, like literally none of this home educating biz that many of us managed so effortlessly last year. And Happy New Year, everyone. This is my first time back for 2021. And as always on this show, I continue to unwrap one of the greatest gifts going around, and that is people. Layer by layer, we explore the thoughts, experiences, achievements, and challenges of ordinary people bound to inspire the best you. So turn up your radio. The time is just 32 minutes past 10. Now, we just heard from the beautiful and talented Michelle Ciccardo with her globally popular Italian program, Fantastica Michelle. Bye. She's left the studio already. And on a more serious note, did you know that breast cancer is the most commonly diagnosed cancer in Australia, and its incidence is increasing, with 1 in 7 Australian women and 1 in 716 Australian men expected to be diagnosed in their lifetime. Every day, at least 55 Australians will be told they have breast cancer, and today's guest, woman extraordinaire Kathryn Elliott, was added to this list when she received a diagnosis of locally advanced triple positive breast cancer on the 23rd of August in 2019, and she was aged just 46. Today, Kath is keen to very generously share her gnarly experience with breast cancer and talk about how the men in her life, her husband Paulos and sons Oscar, Tom and Hugo, responded to her diagnosis, treatment and recovery. It's quite a story. Now, I'm so bloody excited to be having a physical guest in the studio today, the first in the entire year of COVID. So, Kath, jump over the panel here and give me a great big hug. Come on. We can do this. Yay. We are live streaming at the moment. I've got a massive thumbs down from son Rory that was a very bad thing to do. Why was that, Rory? Just weird. Anyway, welcome. Welcome, Kath.
Thanks so much for having me, Rae. I'm really excited to be here as your first guest for 2021.
Exactly. And according to Rory, we're a weird experience.
Yeah, I think my 12-year-old son would say the same thing.
Can you stop the live streaming now, please, Rory? Thank you very much for that. Well, like so many other wonderful people in my life, Kath, the divine Steve Carey, he's quite a connector for me, and he rang me last year and said, you've got to meet this woman, Kathryn Elliott. She's been a colleague, but she's more than a colleague. She's quite a remarkable woman. So we got on the phone. I remember driving down to Mentone Beach with my dog and with my son, Rory, the weird son, and having a conversation with you and getting into a bit of a kerfuffle in the traffic and using a number of swear words that I normally wouldn't use on a first meeting, although some might say I would. But it was a pleasure to meet you then, and because of the stop-starts we've had with COVID, I really wanted to have you live in the studio, so this is our first chance. So tell us, Kath, we've already done a bit of an intro about your diagnosis, but that moment when you discovered that there was something not right with your body, what was that like?
It was a completely life-changing moment, but it's also been such a pivotal moment for me to reflect back on, because
Kath, I'm just going to ask you to just move a bit. Yeah, that's better. And maybe move your mic just a bit closer to your mouth. That's better.
Like that?
Perfect.
Yeah, I was in kind of the busyness of my morning. I'd been at the gym. I had the kids downstairs getting ready for school, breakfast. I was rushing up to the shower. I was in the shower. And for some reason, I got out of the shower and I sort of had this download. I thought I'd bought this new floor to wall sort of mirror. And I thought, I'm going to go and have a look at myself, full body, naked, which I had not done in a long time.
I do that all the time. It's a great look.
And anyway, I sort of walked over to the mirror and kind of looked, and then something just directed my eye towards my right breast. I could see a kind of a weird dimpling of the skin there, and I looked down and I could see that there was this kind of raised area there, and my hands went to it really quickly. But what I felt in my body was my heart and it just fell, and I just knew then that something really, serious was going on in my body. And I felt the lump. It was big. It was really big. And my first reaction was to try and massage it out. So that's kind of what I did. And then I realised that it was something. Yeah, it was quite a large lump, and I yelled down to my husband, like screamed his name, and I think he knew that something was up. He ran up. I said, "Can you feel this?" He felt it. He said, "Yeah, that does feel like quite a large lump." And strangely, it felt like it had really come out of nowhere, in that I'd had a breast check, I think maybe 6 or 8 months prior to finding the lump, and nothing had been discovered by my GP.
So when you say a breast check, you mean a mammogram?
No, a physical examination. Okay. Yeah. No, I'd never had a mammogram before at the age of 46. So again, that was something on my list for the next 6 months that I hadn't got around to. But then I immediately went to see my GP that day, and we started the process, and she said, "Yep, this is definitely something we need to go and get checked out." And I was then referred to the Melbourne Breast Unit and went there pretty much straight away.
On that day?
I think I went the next day. I had quite a big, as with all things with work, I had a really big shoot on that day that I attended, and then I went the next day. I got in the next day, and that's when I went through the testing. But I think...
How did you contain that enormous piece of information during what sounds like at least 24 hours?
Well, I didn't contain it just to myself. I didn't tell any of my friends or close family, but obviously my husband knew, and my work colleagues as well. So they knew that I was going to have testing, and everyone was trying to reassure me, "You're so healthy, you'll be fine. It won't be anything serious." But I think, I intrinsically knew in myself that it was something quite serious. So I was expecting a diagnosis of breast cancer. I'd never had lumpy breasts, and I just felt that was what it was.
And given that you described it as quite a big lump, you had not felt it at all?
No. And with the type of breast cancer that I was diagnosed with, it can appear quite quickly. It's quite an aggressive growing type of cancer. And in younger women, as in under 50s or prior to menopause, you can have quite dense breast tissue. So lumps can actually hide within that tissue, and even in routine mammograms, it's sometimes even quite difficult to see large lumps. And that was something that I learned along the way as well.
In this early intervention stage that we're talking about, what would you say to women that could be something preventative that we could be doing every day that's really simple to perhaps detect something a bit?
Checking your own breasts and knowing your own breast tissue, which is not something I was doing every day, every week. I mean, you wouldn't have to do it every day, but it's your body, and everyone's breast tissue is very different. It's really about being in touch with your own body and actually massaging your breasts, going up towards your collarbone, under your arm. And really the best way to do it is kind of with 3 fingers flat down, and just touching around, and just spending some time doing it in the shower with your arm up or lying on the bed. And that's something, again, that I've done a lot of, work on with telling friends, family, people I come into contact with now. It's your responsibility. And the other thing that I wasn't really aware of was that from the age of 40, you can get, a free mammogram, even though not all breast cancer is not often picked up through mammograms either. So sometimes you then have to go and have further testing. And even the lump that I had, which was 5 or 6 centimetres, it came up very sort of slightly on the first mammogram I had, and then I had to have a more intense kind of mammogram with dye, which then showed it up really clearly.
Wow. Because I think we just assume that, if you get a mammogram and it's clear, that means you're in the clear. And are there any other signs and symptoms, Kath, other than a lump?
There are, yes. In my case, I didn't have any, but some women will notice like a discharge from their nipple or a rash, or kind of their breast feels a bit more warm, or there's heat. So there's a lot of different. Sometimes it doesn't show up just as a lump. A lump is one of the symptoms, but I guess anything that feels unusual, or you just notice a change in your own breast shape or tissue, and as I said, nipples as well. There can sometimes be a change in the shape of the nipple, or if there's any discharge coming out from the nipple as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's good. It's good for people to be listening into this. And this is, husbands as well who might spend time there. I don't know, just looking for change.
Exactly.
Is what we should be alerted to. But back to you, and we're in day one now of you making this discovery, and then kind of having to go about life as usual. But how long did it take before you understood the gravity of your diagnosis? And
so I think, like, in my own spirit, I knew straight away, but in terms of getting the official medical diagnosis, it was so quick. I knew within 2 days. I was lucky that when I went to the Melbourne Breast Unit, I was able to see the surgeon straight away, and he did a breast check on me. And I was very grateful for his honesty with me on that day. He felt and did a really thorough check, and he said to me that he said, look, I know breasts, I know breast cancer, and I believe that this will probably be a malignant tumour. And I was relieved that he told me that, and that he was honest.
It was straight to the point.
He was straight to the point. And I then went through a number of tests that day. As I said, I had a mammogram, and then I had an ultrasound, because they also then want to check to see if it looks like anything's in the lymph nodes, which in my case, it didn't look like there had been any lymph node involvement. And the other interesting thing is that I thought the size of the lump meant that it would have spread, but again, that's not the case. Sometimes you can have a very small lump in your breast that's spread, and sometimes you can have a really large lump that hasn't spread. So that was another thing that I learnt along the way, that it's horses for courses, and it's very different depending on the type of breast cancer you have as well.
Were you alone when you were going through these tests, or was Paulos?
No, Paulos was in the waiting room.
Yes.
And I took a picture of myself actually in the waiting room when I was sitting there, and I've kept it because, just the look of, I guess, I look extremely tired and fearful, and it was one of those days that I wanted to record what it felt like to be a woman waiting in the waiting room to get the results of those tests. And I even get emotional talking about it, but I was
please do.
Yeah, I was sitting next to a woman at the time, and she could tell how nervous I was, and she actually held my hand and said to me, I'm really sorry you're going through this. And just the human compassion from another person was so important to me in that moment, because you do feel really alone, and you are alone with your own thoughts and what's going on. And what I was thinking at the time was, my gosh, I'm 46. I've never been really into hospital. I lead a very healthy lifestyle. Oh my gosh, the first thing that comes into your mind is you think, my life could be cut short. I've got cancer. I'm sure of it. That's what I was thinking to myself. My gosh, what am I going to do? And all of this stuff starts going through your mind. But this beautiful woman just held my hand and made me feel that I wasn't alone, and that I could talk to her and connect. And it was a stranger, but just someone who, and I always remember that now in life, that there's always an opportunity to connect with someone, even if they're not someone you know. It's just a shared experience. So that for me was a pivotal moment there in that waiting room. And then even just the way the nurses and the lady who was doing the mammogram, the way that they held me and looked after me was super important. They do this every day. It's an experience that they've probably gone through so many times, but it's the first time that I've been through this experience, and it's quite scary. And you do feel like you're on this absolute kind of whirlwind, and it's like an out-of-body experience. You're going, am I sitting here in this robe about to have a mammogram and being diagnosed with breast cancer? Is this actually my life? But then slowly but surely all these people start connecting with you and being really kind and loving and just explaining what's happening. And that for me was really important. So I was very lucky to feel in that first day in that medical arena that I had some love and trust, and that these people actually were looking after me.
I think I was walking with my friend Liz this morning, which I often do, and we were talking about vulnerability and how if you're held in your moment, you're held with strength in a moment, it makes all the difference to feeling, so vulnerable that you feel out of control. But when you were just describing that, it really resonated with me. It just felt like everyone came around you and held you.
Absolutely. And that has been the way that I have approached this whole experience, is that I think too often in life when people are going through trauma or going through difficult experiences, they hold back, they don't share what's going on, or there's something about vulnerability that people are scared or frightened of. And so for me, I really wanted to push myself to be vulnerable and to share the experience as it was.
But not only are you experiencing this because you have people in your life that rely on you and who love you. What was that like? I mean, Paulos was there and probably recipient of the information quite quickly. But what was it like having to tell your sons?
That was really difficult, actually. I felt this sense of that I was going to be telling them something that was going to have it was actually going to have a real effect on their childhood and their growing up years, their teenage years. The fact that their mum has breast cancer, I really felt so responsible for pain and hurt and worry. And my oldest son was 14 at the time. Yeah, Tom was 12 and Hugo was 10. So they were all at quite different developmental phases and stages, and very different personalities as well. Oscar at the time was really going through some challenging behaviour. He was pushing boundaries. He's a very independent, spirited boy, and doesn't really like kind of structure and authority. So he was just testing all of those boundaries. I've always been close to him emotionally, but we are very similar. So we also clash. But he was very, very affected by the news. He was, extremely worried and anxious. So we organised some counselling very quickly for him. And he had this beautiful relationship with a school counsellor who he continues to see to this day. And she was an amazing support to him. And we got onto that very quickly.
So were you and Paulos handling this together with the kids, or didn't feel completely alone?
We did. Look, that's a part of the process that I think we managed really well. We've always been very open with the kids about any emotional stuff that's going on in the family.
But this is happening to you. It's not happening to anyone else. Yep. And I was thinking last night when I was planning the show, that mother guilt thing that we all get at the birth of our first child, or before that probably. Did that sort of activate your need to protect your children from what was happening to you?
I did, but it was in a way of I had this absolute belief that the way that I approached my diagnosis and how I communicated it and how it was received and the way people then responded back to me was really going to be important. So I was very positive, and I also managed the communication out to everyone and told people how I wanted them to respond and be. And I think that was so important because I did not want people to be breaking down. And not to say that I don't mind people crying, but I didn't want their fear and all of that sort of stuff to be pinged back at me. I was dealing with so much emotionally already. So what I did was I crafted a text message that I sent out to my closest friends. I obviously called my mum and dad, but really, yeah, this text message was what I sent out to my closest sort of friends and my brothers as well, my 3 brothers, to let them know what had happened and to say, I'm really happy to chat about it, but I want you to digest this first before we talk. And I found that was a really useful way for them to actually just deal with their own emotions first, and then to have the discussion after it had landed was, I think, much better for me.
And was that something you received guidance from?
No, it just was something that it came to me, and that's the way I wanted to manage it. And I think that absolutely helped me protect my own kind of energy from other people's responses, as I said.
Because I imagine every day was a new step into something new as well.
It really was. And my experience is with breast cancer is everyone's treatment schedule is quite different depending on the type of breast cancer you have. And for me, I was diagnosed on, I think, a Thursday or a Friday, and I started chemotherapy the following week. So I had so much to digest, and it was so quick that it really did feel like a whirlwind. The other fantastic thing that happened was that, a very close friend of mine organised a brunch for me on the Sunday before I started treatment, just with, 6 to 8 of my closest old school friends.
On your website.
And that was just, again, that for me, it was just showing love and compassion. All my girlfriends got around me. They all made a short little speech about the things that they loved about me, and just words of encouragement and support as I went into, treatment, I guess. And I remember feeling on that day that it just my nervous system, it just made me feel this unconditional love was there for me. And again, that was something that I drew on regularly as I went through treatment and some of the challenging times that came up over that 12 to 15 months. And interestingly, I've spoken about, Oscar, my oldest, and then Tom, my middle son. He isn't as openly expressive with his emotions, but he was really hit hard. I spoke to him in the car 2 weeks ago, and I just said, how worried were you when I had breast cancer? And he looked at me and he said, Mum, it was the hardest time in my life. And I didn't even know that, but he said that to me, and I was like, really? And for him, he just really didn't say a lot, but he had a close friend whose mum had been through breast cancer maybe 5 years before I had, who had gone through treatment and was doing really well, in remission. So that for him was
the hope.
Yep. And then my youngest son, Hugo, who was 11 at the time, or 10 or 11, he is such a quirky kid. So his kind of reaction was, Mum, you're the healthiest person I know. There's no way. I think the doctors have got this wrong. And he was just like, you're going to be absolutely fine. I know. And he had this blind positivity, which was fantastic. He didn't actually worry very much because look, although physically my appearance did change quite a bit in that I lost quite a lot of weight, and I lost a lot of my hair, and chemo sucks the vibrancy out of you. I didn't feel very unwell, so I was still able to continue doing a lot of what I did for them. Not to say that if you can't, you can't, but I felt physically okay.
Yeah, but it sounds like you had a balance of energy around you as well, and those different responses and reactions can be quite helpful. But you didn't mention how Paulos was responding.
Yeah, so Paulos initially he's a very positive person, so he was fantastic in that he was like, we'll get through this together, I'm here for you, you'll be fine. He wasn't that sort of drama, oh my gosh, this is which would have been great. But what happened with him was, I think he then panicked because his wife, me, who is like the stalwart of the family, I was like the person who everyone relied on, who did everything.
Yeah. Then keep going.
Yeah. And he, I think, thought, what am I going to do if something happens to her? And then what happened was, he started drinking a bit. And not that he didn't drink before. He did drink, but I'd say he was a bit more of a binge drinker. He didn't drink every night or anything. But his drinking started to increase. He just wasn't coping with the situation and couldn't really face up to being present with what was going on.
Yeah.
So that then really created issues in our relationship. I told him what I needed, and I made it very clear that I wanted him to stop drinking over that time, and I just needed him to be present.
Yeah.
And he said he would. But what I've learned is he wanted to be there, but at the time he couldn't, because what he realised afterwards was that he had a really problematic relationship with alcohol, and he couldn't help it. So we were just in this kind of cycle.
And those stages of grief as well, the first one being denial. Alcohol's very handy for the denial stage of grief.
Absolutely.
But Kath, because this is quite a really important part of our conversation, we're going to go to a break.
Yep, perfect.
And when we come back, let's continue that and talk about moving into the treatment and recovery stage and the ways that you manage, but on this as well, conversely, how your family coped as well, and a bit more about your journey with Paulos and your relationship, because I know the story, but it's a really, really good one for, I think, any family who's going through change. It doesn't have to be enormous change, but especially when it's related to grief.
Yeah, absolutely. And trauma as well. Absolutely.
And thank you for being so real about this as well. I love meeting with people and being able to help you tell your story that's not glossing over the more, as we use that word, gnarly stuff.
Absolutely. And that's what my greatest learnings from this have been, to be open-hearted and truthful and vulnerable about what's really going on.
Yep.
Yeah.
So scratch the surface. Before that though, Kath, this is the time we start rolling out my very special guest song requests. And I've started mixing things up. So I give cryptic clues and you've got to guess which song it is that I'm playing next. So here's the clue to the first one. Kath, I'm hoping there's not going to be any tidal movements when I take my dog swimming at Mentone Beach this afternoon. You chose 3 songs. In fact, you chose about 6 and I knocked them all back. One had swear words in it.
Which ones I chose.
I'll give you another one. Roy's got a rip in his pants. It could be Riptide.
Riptide.
Yes.
Yeah, Vance Joy. Woohoo!
Now tell us what that means to you after all. That obviously means nothing. Can't even remember what it was.
I know. Well, most of the songs I actually wanted to choose were over 3.5 minutes
Or
long.
had the swear words.
Yeah, or had the swear words. No, Riptide it's a song of happiness and joy. It brings it, whenever I listen to it, I feel so energetically in a good space. And it was a song that I listened to quite a lot when I was going through chemotherapy, when I was going out for walks in nature. It just lifted my vibe. So I have a really strong kind of connection to the joy that song brought up in me when I was going through treatment.
Well, here's some joy, everyone, by Vance Joy. It's Riptide. You're listening to 94.1 FM. It's 3WBC, and we'll be right back. So that was pretty cute.
That's really cute.
So, Kath, on that, I'm looking at your beautiful, smiling, laughing face. But tell me, what does it feel like being you today?
It actually feels amazing to be me. A girlfriend I caught up with last week said to me, Kath, I've never seen you so present and so, I guess, loving life like you are now. And it's true. I actually am living my best life, because I feel like the lessons through cancer and facing my own mortality has enabled me to connect with a channel within myself that is like this really sacred, deep bond that I have with myself. And that's the most important bond there is for me in my life, that one with myself. And so I think cancer enabled me to really appreciate the person and the soul that I am, and the strength that I have, the love that I have around me, and also the potential that there is in my life, and that the experience of living in this life is so precious, so precious, that we all take it often for granted. And I don't take it as much for granted now that I have had a second chance. I really don't. I allocate time every day now to appreciating the fact that today I am alive and I'm healthy, and I am much more conscious about how I choose to live each day as well, and where I put my energy, my friendships, and I think I also want to focus more on the relationships and the connections in my life that mean something to me, because that, when I was in the dark, kind of, I guess, the real trenches of going through cancer and treatment, what came up for me was love from my mum and dad, love from my brothers, love from Paulos and the boys. There were really difficult parts as well, but this unconditional love from my beautiful friends as well, that just surrounded me.
Held you again.
And held me.
When we went to the break, Kath, we were talking about Paulos and the other person in the relationship that came up, which was alcohol.
Yep.
And I really wanted to, while you're talking about relationships, because I know that you two have done a lot of work additional to the work that you've done with yourself and gaining that bond that you just described. So tell me a little bit more about that that little journey.
Yeah, look, I think alcohol played a role in both our lives for quite a long period of time. I was your classic binge drinker. I drank a lot from when I was about the age of 15. I had a capacity to actually hold quite a lot of alcohol for a woman. I was always encouraged to drink. And when Paul and I met, we drank together. That was one of the things that we did, was get pissed together. And not unlike what a lot of people do, and with groups of friends, our family. It was something we, I guess, took through our lives. And 2 and a half months before I was diagnosed, I'd been really looking at my relationship with alcohol, I reckon, for about 5 to 7 years prior to being diagnosed with breast cancer. And I just had this this feeling in me all the time, oh, I just don't like what's going on. Anyway, I decided to stop drinking. I'd had months where I'd gone off alcohol. Then I thought, I'm just going to I just want to stop and just see what that feels like. With no end date, I just want to see what taking alcohol out of my life is going to feel like. So I decided to do it. And
Did you do that alone?
I did. Yep.
I noticed that you're friends with Hello Sunday Morning.
Yes, yeah. So that was part of I reached out to the CEO there to do.
I think he might be listening into the show. I can't remember what his name is, but
Andy.
Andy, that's right.
I did an interview with Andy about my relationship with alcohol, and that was part of me coming out and talking about my experience and just not feeling ashamed about what had
just by
happened.
the way, for people who are listening, because I just got a text message to say, what is this Hello Sunday Morning? It's a fantastic group. It's more than a support group. It's a whole movement to work with people who need more support breaking their relationship with alcohol, and it's very positive. And
yeah, they're an amazing organisation, really. And I think the thing is, it's not about necessarily taking alcohol completely out of your life. But
yeah,
a lot of people,
it's not a shaming platform like many of the others.
It's not at all, or not labelling you an alcoholic. But it's for people who want to look at their relationship with alcohol. And we're all unique individuals, we all have a different situation going on. Yeah, so back to Paulos and I. So we'd always drunk together. I then decided I just wanted to stop drinking. He continued to drink, and I never put any pressure on him. But it became, I guess, obvious that once I was diagnosed, his drinking sort of took a real kind of surge, and I was kind of thinking, I don't know how this is going to work long term, not only through my diagnosis and treatment, but just long term, where we were really kind of leading our lives in such a different way. And yeah, I voiced that to him. We talked about it, and he, at the time when I was going through chemo, he just couldn't cope with it. He's like, I can't look at this. So
Can't look at what?
Can't look at my drinking right now. So he continued to drink. He continued to sort of have binge sessions.
Was he able to describe to you what the confronting part of your treatment was?
Not really. Not then. I think he was too far down in his own stuff. And so I very quickly decided that I was just going to protect myself. So I focused on and I still felt love from him. And that's the other thing. It's relationships are complex and people are complicated. So although this was going on, he was still really supportive in other ways with the boys, with coming to treatment, and it wasn't kind of a black and white situation, which a lot of things in life aren't. But it was something that we knew was sitting under there, and it was bubbling up, and something was going to happen. I could just, he was getting more random. He was staying out longer at night. He wasn't able to really emotionally have conversations with me that I wanted to have. So I did feel distance from him emotionally whilst I was going through treatment. And I think he also felt alone because he didn't get the support and didn't have the support that I had. So as the male, as the husband, he didn't have the networks that I had. He felt, and we spoke about it in the car this morning. He said, please get this point across. I felt so alone. No one really remembered me. I got maybe a text every now and again, but I was really in a lot of pain, and he didn't really know how to reach out or how to even, the way he knew he soothed that pain was through drinking, because normally he'd come to me and we'd talk or whatever, but he didn't. That just wasn't the right dynamic in this situation. So I think that's another thing to remember, is that there's the person who is experiencing cancer physically, but then there's their family and the partner or people closest to them are really going through a lot of pain themselves, and sometimes they get forgotten about, and their mental health is really important. And I know for Paul that his mental health was really not in a great place at that point in time, and I couldn't really help him either because I had to focus on my own healing and getting better.
Yeah, and it's that what you mentioned about Paul and not getting that support. We see that so often. It generally starts with men who become fathers. There's a lot of support for women during that time, and that's why things like postnatal depression in men is so overlooked, because no one's looking and no one's watching about what they're experiencing as they move through. And we know that 93% of research that goes into health is for women. Only about 7% goes into health for men. So we're not addressing these comorbid issues, I guess, that are attached to something original, like say breast cancer in women. We're not looking at what's more comorbid with men, and that is the grief and loss, and the reliance on substance, which is just another form of killing men, really.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm really passionate about that as well. Like, I feel my heart breaks that he was so alone and didn't have that support.
Mm.
And even with, the Breast Cancer Network of Australia and the support groups, there's great support groups for women and men going through breast cancer, but for their partners, there's not a lot there for them.
Yes. I was even saying to somebody a little while back, because I know men who have been diagnosed with breast cancer, and men can't get breast cancer. Yes, they can. And then I said to somebody, well, predominantly it's women, and I told them the statistics, and they said, well, it's only 1 in 717 men. Well, doesn't that man matter? This whole disposability of, just because a lot of men don't get breast cancer means the ones that are getting it are quite disposable and we don't really care.
Exactly. And imagine being one of those men who is diagnosed. And I was lucky too, when I was part of the Breast Cancer Network, like Pink Buns program last year. They always have a man that's part of that program to represent that men do get breast cancer, and it's something that affects them and their families. So it's that whole thing of, even though it's a minority group, they're still just as important. They still deserve to be represented.
Well, thank you for indulging me in my passion on this show, which is about women's breast cancer. But any chance I can get to promote the event. So well done, Paul. Hope you're still listening in. But on Paul and your relationship, because I know that you're now in a really good space. How did you get there?
Through being prepared to go into some really challenging, dark places, through being prepared to, I think for me I got to a point where I was like, I'm prepared to leave this marriage and it's going to be okay, and I'm going to be okay, and that I'm not going to, I don't want to be in a relationship with someone who's abusing alcohol. I need more than that for myself and my family. And so his behaviour continued to sort of get, I guess it went through ups and downs, but in the first lockdown last year, when I'd finished chemo but I was going through radiation therapy, he really hit rock bottom then. I was in remission, but I was living differently. It was very obvious I was never going back to alcohol. I was really strong in the way I was wanting to lead my life, and he could feel that we were really growing apart, and so he was panicking. And I'd let go of trying to control the situation, trying to tell him what to do. I thought to myself, it's his life. I love him and I want the best for him, but it's not about me telling him what to do. It's about him working that out for himself. So it was funny. Once I took that layer of control off, that's when he made the decision that he needed help. And he came to me after one, night where he went out and didn't come home till the next day, and he was really not in a good way. And he said, I need help. will you stay with me whilst I get help? And I said, of course I will. I can't promise the future, but I'll stay with you as your friend, as your wife. I love you. I want to help you. I'll always be there for you in that way. So we did a lot of, research for the type of help that we thought would be right for him. He found a fantastic mentor who was another man who'd been through a lot of issues with alcohol, who he saw for 12 weeks, 3 times a week, and did a lot of kind of program workshop stuff with him. He also saw an alcohol and drug counsellor, and we started having marriage counselling.
So a lot of counselling.
It was big. It was big. But as soon as he made that decision, things felt better. Wasn't easier because we still had to do a lot of work, but it felt like there was a shift in him. And I guess it wasn't until 2 weeks later he had a bit of a relapse in that we went out for dinner and he drank and then got himself into a really negative frame of mind and sort of had a bit of a bender, came home the next day, and it was then that he made the decision that he needed to stop drinking. So that was at the end of June last year, and he hasn't had another drink since. He decided. I didn't make him, force him. It came from his own experience.
Yeah.
And so slowly but surely, that decision then has enabled us to heal so much dysfunction in our relationship, but we've also just connected so on such a deep level because we've been through so much together over the 20 years that I now have this new found respect, love, understanding for him as a person. We walk and talk every morning. We walk for an hour every morning and just talk about how we are, what's going on for us. So that connection has been super important in the last 12 months for me. And that has come through because I had breast cancer. I'm not sure that we wouldn't be where we are now. We'd probably still be drinking. I have no idea, and still in a dysfunctional cycle in our relationship. And the ripple effect that that's had on the way we parent our boys is just, that has been a true gift because we are so present for them. We're not role modelling binge drinking or alcohol. They've had some issues themselves. We've been really present with them and able to be there as a couple supporting one another, not angry. And even this morning we were talking about Tom had 4 friends over last night to sleep over, and it felt so good because Paul and I were there, we were laughing with the kids, and it was just a really nice moment where I thought we wouldn't have been here 12 months ago. Paul probably would have been drinking wine and not there, and I would have been stressed. But we were there as a couple, as a family. And that felt really, really good.
Just listening to you tell this part of your story, it's sort of like the cancer was secondary to this big part of your life that you'd been managing for, almost 20 years. And then all of a sudden it feels like you've been remarried.
Yeah, we actually have, it's funny because I always scoffed when people renewed their vows.
Yeah.
And not that we are, but I can understand why people do, because I feel like this is a second marriage. It feels like a completely different relationship. It feels like we're both quite different people and we're living differently.
But still have the same connection.
But still have the same connection, a deeper connection. And that this phase of life feels really exciting. And I think because the experience of breast cancer was traumatic, but also there was a lot of healing through that this was another part of the healing, was our marriage, our relationship, our family, the way we functioned. And it still continues to this day that we're still working on that. And yeah, that's one of the things that I'm most grateful for.
Because you still haven't talked about remission really, or that moment when you were in the clear? 'Cause
Yeah.
that must have been something.
Well, I mean, that moment was, just I envisaged it and I focused on it a lot during my treatment. I, f- I did a lot of meditation and I felt into myself about what is it going to feel like when you're told those words. And I would feel this incredible sense of lightness and happiness. But when I was told that the cancer was no longer there, I broke down into tears of joy. My mum and dad were there. Paulos was there, my doctor. But it was sort of, I actually knew it because I could feel that the lump had completely gone and I just knew in my body. But to then have the results from the scan felt incredible. I mean, the funny thing for me was I found out that I was, cancer free midway through my treatment. So I still had to continue, surgery, radiation, and the targeted therapy for 6 months afterwards. But and I guess for me that felt quite good because I knew I was in the clear. So it made that next phase of treatment feel like that was just improving, I guess, the chance of it not returning.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that in the back of your mind?
Not really. I had a moment of anxiety last week. It's the first moment I've had, and I don't know where it came from. I was going in to see my oncologist the next day. I'd stayed the night at Shoreham with a very close friend of mine, and I was driving home, and I just felt this weird panic came across me, and I think that was it.
We're just waving just there's some fans out there. Turn around and wave, Kath. There you go. Give them a thrill for the day. We've got a fan club outside Studio 1 here at 3WBC.
Gorgeous.
Yeah. I'm sorry to interrupt, but we've got to look after our fans.
Oh, you do. We do. Yeah, so
we're talking about the moment when you were told and then the treatment afterwards and then
yes.
And then I asked you the question, do you ever
yeah, so I did have that moment of anxiety, but really no, I don't. I really try to just focus on today, and today I feel the best I've ever felt in my whole life. I feel really healthy and well, and that's what I focus on. I try not to think about the future. I try to just be in today. Which helped me through my treatment as well. It was always about each day, get through today and focus on the things that you can control and your reactions and the love that's around you, and that's what I focus on. So I don't feel much anxiety about it coming back, and I think the type of breast cancer that I have and the response that I have had to treatment has given me quite a good prognosis in terms of the likelihood of it coming back isn't huge. It's less than 10%.
Yeah.
Statistically, I feel those statistics are pretty good, and that's another reason why I've chosen not to drink anymore, because the links between alcohol consumption and breast cancer are a lot larger than a lot of people think.
Yeah.
So even just 3 standard drinks a week increases your risk of breast cancer by, between 10 and 15%, particularly estrogen-driven breast cancer, so hormone-driven breast cancer. So for me, again, that was just another lifestyle decision that I thought, I'm loving the way I'm living and there's no reason now for me to go back to drinking.
Yes.
And it was also an area that I wanted to focus on for awareness as well, that a lot of women have no idea about their levels of drinking and how it can affect breast cancer and other cancers for that matter.
That's right. And it's not, there's so much research that's been done, but we just get the statistics about survival or not. But the risk factors, I don't think probably are promoted as well as they should be, because I think also with breast cancer, the assumption is often that it's a hereditary thing, which it's not.
Well, that was another aha moment for me, because I I had this false sense of security. I'm not going to get breast cancer. I've got no family history.
Yep.
And of course, once I did some research, when I found out I had breast cancer, only less than 10% of breast cancer diagnoses have a genetic link. So it's 90% or more that don't.
Yes.
And most people I speak to were the same as me. They thought, I'm okay, I don't have any breast cancer in my family.
Yeah.
So it's really important, again, that we self-check, that we're aware of the links between alcohol consumption, and also, it's just things about diet and exercise and those sorts of things
And your
that
environment.
are really important. And your environment. Yeah, I mean, I've taken a lot of toxins out of my life as well.
Yeah.
I don't wear perfume anymore. I use very natural skin, like just little things.
Well, even deodorants were always very
So,
linked.
I've used natural deodorants for a long time, but absolutely, that's so important.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh dear, Kath, it's it's a lot, isn't it?
It is.
So it's 31 minutes past 11 or 29 minutes to 12, whichever way you want to look at it. So let's go to our last break and into our final segment. And when we come back, let's talk a bit more about what you've been doing by way of advocacy and also the evolution of the breast cancer space, because we all know that there's a lot of publicity and fundraising, but is it really resonating? Because if the stats are going up, if it's increasing, what's all the money doing? I don't know. But maybe you can answer that. So it's the second special song request, and hopefully you go a little bit better with the cryptic.
I hope so.
Than last time.
Hopefully I can remember the songs that I've chosen.
I think I've actually cued the wrong song anyway. It's the one starting with J.
Jubal.
Yes, that's the one.
The radio edit.
Yes. And I did have something else in my show notes, but anyway, so we're going to go for Jubal. Is that how you say it?
Yeah, Jubal. I love this song because my boys love it, and we listen to it in the car, and it just makes us happy, and we have a little groove in the car. So
when was it released?
I don't know. Maybe the last couple of years. Yeah.
And who's the artist?
Klingade or Klingand or something.
Oh, there you go. At least you know that.
Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't have pronounced that.
I don't know if I've pronounced it correctly.
No,
I'll be told if I haven't.
All right, everyone. So don't go away. When we come back, we will talk about some of the things that Kath's getting up to and also the world of breast cancer prevention also. So don't go away. You're listening to 94.1 FM. It's 3WB. It's 36 minutes past 11 and you're listening to 94.1 FM. It's 3WBC with Rae Bonney, joined by Kathryn Elliott. She's a lucky breast cancer survivor who's determined to make a difference for those who follow her. Aren't you, Kath?
Of course I am. Yay.
Now, I was doing research last night. I love research. I love data. You know, for a person who just talks all the time for a living, I really love research and data. I love collecting it. I like making sense of it. I love cleansing it. I like making it into stuff. But I found a recent study that was only just released on the 28th of January this year about the revelation of the burden of chronic illness on breast cancer survivors. So it's an Australian study published in the Medical Journal of Australia that's examined the long-term survival of 32,646 cancer patients from South Australia. And the study was led by a bunch of funded researchers, I shan't name them. And they deduced that chronic conditions like heart disease and diabetes are common in many people diagnosed with breast cancer, and that these chronic conditions can affect treatment options, increase treatment toxicity, and lead to a poorer prognosis. So until now, little was known about how these additional chronic conditions affected the survival of cancer patients.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, as with any treatment through medical kind of other drugs, there's often other things that can happen as well. So particularly with chemotherapy, a lot of...
Can I just ask what that's like?
Yeah. Look, for me, it wasn't as bad as I'd heard it was going to be. but I did quite, because I'm into holistic sort of medicine and healing as well. So I actually did quite a lot of work in that space to try and help myself like get mentally kind of around it. But it sucks the living daylight out of you. You don't feel like yourself. You don't feel energetic or vital at all, and you feel very tired. And for me, it changes the colour of your skin. Like you kind of look really a bit grey and pale, and you lose a bit of sense of taste. I didn't get any nausea really. So that was, a lot of people do get horrific nausea. And I wore the cold cap to protect my hair from falling out.
So I don't know what that is.
Oh my gosh.
The cold cap.
So that was
sounds
the bane,
cold.
That was the bane of my life.
Yeah.
I had to wear it 16 times. It's like wearing an ice cube on your head. And you have to wear it for half an hour prior to treatment, and then treatment would take an hour and a half, say, and then half an hour to an hour afterwards. So you might have this ice cold cap on your head for 4 hours. And it literally is like, you get those really horrific. A lot of people can't deal with it, and they're like,
and what is it supposed to do though?
Well, basically it freezes your hair follicles so that the chemotherapy drug can't get into them, and so your hair doesn't all fall out. So the type of chemo that I had to start off with, literally 100%, you lose all your hair. It just falls out and you go completely bald. So I decided to use the cold cap to see if I could keep my hair or some of it. And I was deemed a success in that I kept probably 40 to 50% of my hair. It was very slim pickings. I could have done an ad for Ashley Martin, but it was there. And so I continued to wear the cold cap, but it added a lot of time to my treatment and pain. Like, it was really uncomfortable. And
would you do it again? I mean, hopefully you don't have to do it again. But
someone else asked me that question. I don't know. I don't think so. But then the fact that I did keep some of my hair, it wasn't more for me. It was for the fact that for the kids, I still looked like mum. And also when I went out, I wasn't straight away the person going through cancer. Yeah. I liked that I could go to a cafe and be on my own, and people didn't know that I was going through cancer.
Yeah.
So that, and then once I finished treatment as well, my hair grew back quite quickly, and it's actually grown back completely differently. It's quite curly. I had dead straight hair, so I have a new look now. And that felt like I was regenerating and everything was happening a lot more quickly. Whereas I have a girlfriend who has just gone through breast cancer, and she lost all of her hair, and I think for her it's been quite difficult because it takes quite a while for it to grow back. So that's just another 6 months, a year of people looking at you and going, yeah, I know you've
Is that
been
how
through
long it takes?
Well, it does. Yeah, it does take a while, particularly if you're completely bald. It takes a while for it to, because then you've got the crew cut, and then and often it grows back completely grey as well, or really curly, which in my case, mine grew back quite wavy. So, the cold cap definitely isn't for everyone. And, I definitely don't know whether I could do it again. It was hard.
Yeah. I think it's something that people don't talk a lot about. We talk about treatment and recovery and diagnosis to begin with, but we don't really say, what does that feel like what actually happens. It's like when we were talking about mammograms before, I'm going to be 53 this year, and I didn't get a mammogram until last year because a friend shamed me into it. And I guess my underlying fear was, I'm quite a well-endowed girl and I was scared that it was going to really hurt, and then sort of just kept on putting it off and thought, well, it's not going to happen to me because breast cancer doesn't run in my family either. And when I had it done, it was a really good experience. It didn't hurt, and I think, you were describing a bit of this before, being treated with such dignity, during that process and care, and having somebody who does it all day, every day, to know how to have a firm hand but a kind heart at the same time. And I got home, and because my daughter was on standby going, "Oh, Mum, you're going to be fine." And it was during COVID, so she couldn't come with me. And I said it was nothing. It was actually quite fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I didn't find it too painful either. You just get moved around, and that they know what to do, and they manage all different size breasts every day. So I felt really like and particularly the woman who was managing my kind of my first mammogram, she did it very slowly. She explained it might be a bit cold, whatever, and that she just made me feel like, yeah, this is fine. You're gonna be okay. And look, it wasn't something it was amazing, but it wasn't that uncomfortable at all.
Yeah, but I think it's if we can help sort of promote you during this show for people that are listening in. It doesn't matter if you're not a woman, anyone that you can impart this knowledge to, that it's not just one intervention. So if you go and get a mammogram, doesn't mean that you're in the clear. That self-examination, you're talking about in the shower. I know I learned at a young age that soap is a really good conductor, I guess, where you can pick up small inconsistencies. And if you do it every day, like you said, Kath, having that relationship with your body to know what was yesterday, if tomorrow's changed, well, there's an indication that something's different. Or
yes, and it's also as women, obviously hormonally, we go through quite different changes throughout the month, and so the texture of our breasts.
I think I'm going through it now. No, I'm just joking.
The texture of our breasts changes as well. So it's also being aware of that. Don't just check your breasts at one time. That's one time in the month. It's really important to understand what it feels like. When you have your period, when you're ovulating, even once you've gone through menopause, there will still be different changes happening. Yeah. And it's important to understand those, because your breasts sometimes do feel more lumpy at certain times of the month or times of your life. And I think for me that was this message that came through for me that was so important. Was we spend so much time and so much of our life in our minds and not in our bodies, and it's really important to dedicate some time to come back into our body and listen to it. And it is often trying to tell us something, and we're too much in here and not in here.
She just pointed to her head and then her heart, by the way, because they can't actually see you, Kath.
And that's what happened in the shower for me. I came back into my body, and this is kind of a nice segue into I guess what I'm now doing with the breast cancer experience. Led me into this whole kind of thing. I want to, launch some products that are going to focus on this area. So I've set up a brand called My Breast Friend. I haven't launched the products yet, but I'm in the process of putting them together. And I'm going to raise money for the Breast Cancer Network. But these products, I'm going to have a shower gel and a body lotion, and they are all about coming back into your body, and I'm going to have instructions for self-checking. So when you're in the shower, just remember, take a breath, check your breasts. This is what you need to do. So I just want to remind people that it's so important to do that. And not just for breast cancer, but for anything going on in your body, you need to listen to it sometimes.
What a great initiative, Kath. And, straight away, we're always looking for gifts for girlfriends, What a great gift. When is this launching, and where can people get it?
I don't know yet, because I'm still going through product development, but I'm hoping they will be ready by Mother's Day, so before Mother's Day.
Oh, well, that's really soon.
Yeah, May.
That's May. That's it.
There's my deadline.
So remember that, My Breast Friend. Not hard to remember, is it?
No.
And you've got an Instagram.
I do, at Healing Breast Cancer, yes. And I will be setting one up for my new business as well. So, yeah, look, the experience prior to prior to being diagnosed, I worked in PR for 25 years, and it was a career that I really, really enjoyed for the most part. And I've decided to move on from that. It was, I think, there was just another calling that came through to me through the experience of breast cancer. So I'm launching these products, and I'm also just been accepted to do this. I guess it's a coaching program out of America that is all around looking at our relationship with alcohol. So I'm doing that for 6 months, and then that's something that I'm really passionate about as well, is helping people who want to look at their relationship with alcohol and how they can, I guess, develop more awareness around their conditioning. And we are all conditioned from a very young age that alcohol is an important part of all celebrations, all commiserations, for everything. And so this is, I think I went through this program myself and found it was incredibly beneficial to helping me change the way.
Can you name what the program is?
It's called This Naked Mind. So the book is called This Naked Mind, and a woman called Annie Grace in America. It was something that she set up, and she runs what she calls the alcohol experiment for 30 days. I've just been a mentor in her January alcohol experiment, and it was life-changing for me.
Is she the lawyer or something? She was quite prominent, and
she was a really successful salesperson.
That's right.
Yeah.
I think I was following her on Facebook.
Yeah.
Look her up, people. Annie Grace. She's remarkable.
Yeah, she's really good. And she, again, the thing I love about it is there's nothing about shaming. Even if you're still drinking, they don't care. They just want people to come in and learn and be aware. And if you drink during the alcohol experiment, that's fine. It's just another learning opportunity to look at what's going on for you. And her videos are fantastic, and all the information. It looks at all different areas. So I start that in March as well. And
well, we've had some really, really good nuggets of information here this morning. So thank you, or it's almost this afternoon, but thank you for sharing so much. I just saw Marta come into the studios. She's up next, actually, and Rory let her in. I wonder if he's live streaming her on Facebook. Probably do a better job than us, Marta, evidently. But she's got a modern, almost jazz show, so I'm told. So Marta is a new presenter at 3WBC, and I hear that she's become very popular quite quickly. And then following Marta at 3 p.m, we've got Alex coming with her Country Paradise show, which I'm told is a first hour of country music followed by the next hour of Hawaiian music, which is inspired by her father who was born there. So there you go. Now, if any of our discussions today have brought up uncomfortable feelings for listeners, please remember help is there. Here's a few options for further support. Lifeline 131114. Suicide callback service is 1300 659 467, and emergency services is 000. Kath, what's the best resource for people connected with breast cancer?
Definitely first port of call is Breast Cancer Network Australia. They were fantastic for me. So the BCNA, they've got a fantastic helpline, a wonderful website. Yeah. So they're the largest sort of consumer organisation in Australia.
You can just look up Breast Cancer Australia, and I think they come up straight away. They're actually located in Camberwell.
They are,
yes. So it's part of Whitehorse Burundara, because we are a community radio here. And so do check in with people today, have a conversation. If anything you've listened to today has resonated with you, that's where change happens, is by talking to people. It's sharing what you've listened. Don't keep it to yourself, because that's how we can make change.
Absolutely, I agree. I found listening to other people's stories particularly powerful. When I was first diagnosed, I was so hungry to learn from other people's experiences, and what we realise is our own experience, and everyone's experience of life is different. but you pick up nuggets whenever you listen to someone. And I always think it's an absolute privilege to be able to share your own story, and an even greater privilege to listen to someone else's. So, yeah, thank you so much for allowing me to share my own.
Oh, it was so great. I knew it would be great. But, I've learned things today, not only about you, but, different lenses to look through, not just for this issue, but any kind of family trauma, and how families are so important and relationships are so important. And you speak about, connecting in through your family and friends as your support and your hope. And not everyone is lucky enough to have big friendship groups or families at all. We have a very large multicultural community here at Whitehorse, Burundara, but also in Australia, and many of those people are here from another country with nobody. So looking for those resources and helping connect those people to the fabulous resources we already have.
Yes, absolutely. And that's another thing that I'm really passionate about in this space, is developing a buddy system, or someone that when you're first diagnosed, that you can have a woman or a man who's been through an experience who is there for you. That you don't have that at the moment. And
can you get a buddy system for the husbands as well?
Exactly.
Of the women?
Yes.
Like
so
Paul?
Both.
Yes.
So that's another thing that I've got sort of in the back of my mind that I would really like to focus on as well, because I think that I was put in touch with someone and had this conversation, and she was so wonderful for me. But that was just because I found someone. But a lot of people don't have anyone, and they're navigating this experience all alone. And when you're alone, it's really tough.
Oh, yeah.
And that's where I think some of these organisations, that's the next thing. It's about giving you someone who you can talk to, but also once you finish treatment, you're just kind of left as well. So that's the other thing. I'm setting up something for people who've experienced it, but
like an
it's
alumni.
part of their life, and they still want to talk about it and connect and share what's going on. But really, you're kind of just told, okay, treatment's finished, come back for a scan in 5 years' time. Hang on a sec. No.
The grief cycle continues.
What do I do now? Who do I talk to? Where do I go?
Well, Kath, that's a great one to end off on. And thank you for being on the show today. I really, really thank you. Being so open and sharing, and as I said before, just real about what it feels like being you, and also the work that you've done and doing in advocating for better lives for people experiencing breast cancer. Now, this is not my usual show today. I'm filling in because I missed my January show. But I'll be back in a couple of weeks, hopefully with another in-studio guest on Sunday the 14th of February. Is that Valentine's Day?
It is.
Oh, there you go. Valentine's Day. I might have to get... actually, I do have a guest I'm just thinking of. So stay tuned anyway. But Kath, can you take us out today with your final special song request? If there's only one left.
Oh, yes. And it has to come from my favourite rocker of all time, Michael Hutchence, In Excess. Mystified.
Mystified, that's the one.
Yep, definitely.
All right, people. Well, I don't want to keep Marta waiting, so we're going to go straight to this song. Finally, remember, it really is okay to not be okay. And just ask somebody that question. What does it feel like being you today? See ya.
All veils and misty, streets are blue.